a very kind of chaotic thing, to say the least. The only process and sort of our core emphasis is the teams themselves. So we try to like obsess about the team compositions, and our the main focus should be about like building the best possible teams. You know, teams that are like complete. So you have all the required skill sets, and you know, teams that have kind of come in with diverse viewpoints and so forth, and of course teams which are like all like rock star professionals in what they do. But once we have these teams, then we sort of let them free, and you know, you could think these teams as their own independent startups within Supercell. I mean, they are completely independent. There's like no outside force that can sort of tell these teams what to do. They are free to develop the game they want to do. As I said, we give them like sort of complete freedom to do so. And that really is a process, and there isn't anything else. We actually trust the team to know what's best. So if there's a secret to our culture, it is that we sort of, most companies are like how they run is that it's all based on control. So somewhere up there you have a leadership team or management team. It's the leadership team that has the vision and decides what the company should do. And then they exercise all kind of control mechanisms because they want to make sure that the company is going to the direction that they want the company to go. And we are sort of the exact opposite of that. So we've replaced the control with trust. So our focus is that we try to put the best possible teams together, but then we trust these teams to know what's best for the company. And how most teams operate is that, you know, they try to, as quickly as possible, if they have a game idea, they try to come up with a playable. What that means is that they first maybe they have a team playable, so they play it within the team and maybe a few outsiders from a team. Then at some point they release it to the whole company to play. They gather feedback, and those times can be really ruthless, because game developers who get very passionate about games, they are also very good at giving extremely direct and oftentimes very brutally honest feedback to each other. But anyway, they gather this feedback, and sometimes after the feedback they decide that no, we don't want to do this game anymore, and then they kill it, and then they start from all over, start to do something else, or they decided to continue, and then we kind of do these iterations a few times, and if they still want to do the game, at some point we would launch the game on a test market. Quite commonly we use countries like Canada, New Zealand, Australia, these type of countries. English is their first language, but they are not the US, which is the biggest market, so we use these markets as sort of test markets, and we put the game out, and then we get a few tens of thousands of people to play the game. And then at that point you don't really need to ask what the people think about the game, because you can just look at the metrics and see, like, for example, like how many people come back after 30 days of play and so on. And again, like the metric that we look at is retention. That's by far the most important metric for us, because as I said, we want to do these games that people would play for years, so then it just makes sense that we look at the retention metric. And if the retention metric does look good, and it sort of gives us confidence that yes, this might be a game that people would in fact play for years, then we go ahead and release it globally. Back in 2011, then we were about to, or we had just killed our first game, and the lead of that game team just told me over lunch that, hey, you know, in the afternoon I'm gonna organize a post-mortem session for all the developers about this killed game, and I'm just going to tell them that, you know, what we learned from this experience. And over the lunch I thought that, oh, this is going to be a really kind of a sort of like sad meeting, and for that, you know, I would try to do something to cheer it up. And then I actually went and bought bottles of champagne for every developer who were part of that team, and then I just handed them over. I guess we were just joking that, okay, you know, failure isn't fun. I mean, nobody wants to fail, especially if you've worked so hard for 6 or 9 months, day and night, and you know, game essentially has become your baby, and of course it's not fun to kill it. But you know, maybe what's worth celebrating are those learnings that come from that experience. And then I just handed those champagnes to the guys, and everybody thought it was funny, and then this started a tradition. So now every single time that we kind of fail in something. It can be also something else when killing a game. We sort of celebrate it with champagne. And again, we don't really celebrate the failure, but those learnings that come from it. And yeah, so that's the kind of story behind it. We also like updated this policy, by the way, like some years ago, because we had a company offsite and a Q&A session like this. And then somebody raised their hand and said that, hey, I have a suggestion. It is actually like, it's cool that we are celebrating these failures with champagne. But you know, actually like champagne is pretty good, and it would be actually nice to drink it also when you succeed. And then like since then we kind of renewed the policy, so now sometimes we also celebrate the successes with champagne. Supercell is not a technology company. I mean, technology is really important piece and part of what we do, but we are not a technology company. We are a content company, and what like gets us excited is to create these like entertainment or gaming experiences that, you know, hopefully like hundreds of millions of people all around the world can enjoy. Big value for us, in addition to quality, is impact. So we want to like touch the lives of as many people as possible, and whatever is the platform that kind of gets us to that path, that's the platform of our choice. And right now, like mobile it's just a superior platform if you think about the reach and the ease of use. But if in the future there's another platform that does the same thing even better, then of course, you know, we would need to jump on that platform as well. China is a big opportunity for all of us here, frankly. I mean, it's a massive market, as you guys know, and it's developing very fast. From gaming side, it's also a very challenging market because the Chinese players are extremely passionate. They are extremely quality driven, and their bar for a great game is very high. Of course, we have still ways and ways to go with Supercell, but I mean, China is a really great sort of test bed for us, but because I feel that because it's such a competitive market, if we can actually compete on that market, you know, that will make us better as a company. And if you look at, say, the Chinese game developers, like, I mean, the way they think about their games as services, it's unbelievable. Like the cadence of the updates and the amount of new, fresh content that they bring to their players, like every single week, it's just like unbelievable. I think it's just the mindset and how they think about it. Like there's a lot for us to learn here in how they do that. I probably like picked strawberries at a farm or whatever when I was 14, but that wasn't really my thing. No, I'm sort of lucky in a sense that before I even finished university, I decided that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, and then I like just happened to like stumble on these guys who wanted to set up a company, and that company just happened to be a games company. And because I wasn't a game developer and everybody else was a game developer, and all of these guys, like all they wanted to do was develop games, and they needed somebody else to do everything else. These guys, they couldn't afford to pay any salaries, and therefore I don't think there was just one applicant for the job, and that was me. So they took me for the job. This happened when I was, I think, 21. I don't think I've sort of had a kind of real job like ever. So I've always been an entrepreneur and in games, so been very lucky from that point of view. Back in the university days, I actually did have this, for whatever reason, I had this dream of becoming an investment banker, and I don't know why that was. Maybe because everybody else where I studied had the same dream. I was lucky I was saved by entrepreneurship from that. I have been like investing like on a personal side, but then also Supercell has made lots of gaming investments. I think we made 7 so far, and you know, at Supercell, like the way we think about investments is that, you know, we just want to empower great people, great teams. It's very much the same philosophy that we use with the internal game teams. You know, we look external teams who have like, you know, crazy big dreams. They want to innovate, they want to take risk, and if they are like looking for a kind of long-term patient partner to do that, then hopefully we can help. So that's the kind of Supercell side of things. I do some personal investments. I do invest to say VC funds, and sometimes I also invest directly to companies. And I'm such a big believer in people and in teams. Like the number one thing always for me is that I just want to see a great, passionate team that I somehow like, and then they must have a kind of like big global vision. Yes, like most of those times when you have these big crazy dreams, they kind of fail. But you know, every once in a while, if you kind of keep on trying, then it succeeds. And that really is something that excites me. I love to back people who want to try to do like big things. And it's just fun to be part of the journey. And sometimes also, of course, I can be helpful during the journey. So there was this period of time in the games where I think at some point people started to almost believe that data-drivenly it's possible to do hit games. But I personally don't believe that's true. For me, like games, they are an art form, not a form of science. I wouldn't say that we are a like data-driven company by any means. So we are driven by these creative people but then of course we do use data a lot. But what we use data for is that we want to validate with data like how these games are doing. But I don't really believe that by looking at data, you know, that would sort of lead you to kind of hit games. Like ultimately games are about fun, and it's hard for me to see like how do you kind of get a great game idea by somehow analyzing the market or looking at the data. But it's true that once you have a great game, then maybe you can make it better. Like maybe you can make incremental improvements like through the data. Data is a good slave, but it's a really bad master. Oftentimes, if you just look at data, all it leads to is that these games that are sort of better versions of something that already exists, and it doesn't like lead to like truly innovative new games. And if you think about the real breakthroughs in gaming, think about something like say Minecraft, for example. It's extremely hard to like think that you would ever have found something like Minecraft by doing like market analysis or customer research or looking any kind of data. I mean, Markus, who created that game in the first place, just had a great idea, decided to do it, and then it just turned out that it's a fantastic game that people all over the world love. And same is absolutely true about all of the games that we've released. I mean, they come from the minds of the creative people. We build them, we put them out, and then we look at data and see what people think. But I don't think it works the other way around.
But do you do updates on your apps based on data?
I wouldn't say that they do based on the data alone. Like data is like one sort of a factor, of course. I mean, of course we look at like, okay, say we might look at the data, but okay, somebody at this point in the game, like lots of people drop out. So then we can start to play that part of the game and try to figure out why is it that they drop out. Maybe there's something that is kind of hard, we should explain better, or maybe the difficulty curve isn't right, or whatever that is. But again, it's just like one data point. If I think about the early days, I think what happened is that we were lucky enough to have like these amazing people who formed like really great teams, and these really great teams built a few great products that people loved. It sounds like simplistic, but what we did is that we put these games out and people just loved them, and they start to spread. And our players, they spent a lot of time with these games, they talked about these games to other people, that's how they spread. Many of them decided to use money on them, and that's how we start to get sort of cash flow in, and that's how we got started. I know it sounds simple, but I don't think it's any different today. I mean, it's still about the same thing. It's about putting a great group of people together to form these teams, and then every once in a while, like these guys are able to put out great games, but again people love, and then they start to spread. And then of course you can like sort of magnify all of this by ways of marketing, but that isn't sort of where it all starts from. Like if you have an average product, like no matter how much you do marketing, I don't think it'll make it great. But if you do have a great product and then you put great marketing on top of it, it's almost like pouring fuel to the fire. But first you need to have a fire, and that fire is the great product. That's a fantastic question, and something that we've spent lots and lots of time thinking about. I think the first thing that we certainly feel, and I hope that the rest of the industry feels, is this: like we have this great sense of responsibility. I mean, the fact is that in our case, for example, like hundreds of millions of people play our games every single month. Well, that just brings lots and lots of responsibility, and I feel we feel it in our shoulders. The thing about our games is that most of the players are above like 18 years old and they are adults. But still, the fact is that there's also a portion of our players are kids, and that brings you even more responsibility. And the way we've sort of talked about this internally is that you have to be ethical the way you design these games. Basically, like the ultimate test is that, you know, like if you look at the mirror, like, are you proud of what you're doing? Many of us have kids and so forth. So we wanna be the company who kind of does the right thing. And I think it's a great thing that the gaming industry has started to talk about things like loot boxes, for example. And I think that's exactly what this industry needs, is an open discussion about all of these things. I mean, games bring so much great things to the world. I mean, they create happiness, they connect people from all around the world in this world, which seems to be very busy with you know, building walls and you know, like isolating. But games are the one force that, you know, clearly can make world a smaller place. And there's games give opportunity for everybody, like all the kids to be successful in something. And there's like all kinds of great things that games bring with you. But at the same time, there's this other side of a coin. Like, for example, it's not good if people, and kids in particular, spend all of their time just playing games and in front of these screens. And it's not just true about games, it's true about, you know, all the content, like, you know, watching movies or using social media. It's just not great for humans if you spend like 20 hours of your day like in front of a screen, I don't think. All the companies, not just the gaming companies, but everybody who provides services for these platforms should participate in the discussion, you know, like what's right and what's wrong. And you asked like what have we done? So I think the most important thing is like very open, like internal discussion. Like every once in a while and it may sound a bit fluffy, but it's true. We talk about with our game developers and the leaders of our game teams that, you know, what's ethical game design, for example. What are the things that we can do and you know, what are the things that we wouldn't do? That's something that we do. We on the other side of the spectrum, like we've for example, participated in initiatives like against online bullying, which is another thing that games bring. Bullying in schools has been a big problem, but now it has gotten even worse because like the bullying can also happen outside the classroom because kids can use games as a form of bullying, like, you know, with clans and chats and everything. They've done a number of things in trying to like fight against that, and there are many other things. But I think the most important thing is just to like have a like really open discussion among the industry and, you know, just trying to do the right things. I'm not a big believer in like legislation. I think these things must be driven by the people who create these services, not by outside legislators.